Welcome to the Coded Switch podcast, a deep discussion about the experience of intersectionality and vulnerability as it relates to wellness, hosted by Dr. Galanega Machisa and Toltu the Psychologist.
And welcome back to the Coded Switch, another episode with Toltu the Psychologist and Dr. Galanega Machisa, known as Dr. G. We are here to talk about all things related to intersectionality, including, well, every part of our identity. Today, I want to talk about something super interesting. Tina Turner died.
Stop it!
Yeah, you didn't hear? So it happened about 24 hours ago or something, but
Okay.
I think what really struck me was Tina Turner was someone very iconic for people growing up, but I found her even more interesting because she was legendary in terms of entertaining and performing, and don't get me wrong, no qualms about that. But also I think she defied what people's views of success were. And for me, just reflecting on someone like her, she experienced a lot of family violence. She experienced, experienced, things that would usually keep women really down. But I think what she was able to do was recognize what her value was and sort of bring herself back up again. And I just think it's really interesting what society considers as successful and not successful. And, the comebacks that she made, I think there's so many lessons to learn in that from someone like her. So her dying was interesting because I'm like, of course, we lost an absolutely amazing voice, but at the same time as well,
an icon, right? Just like you see her silhouette and you know exactly who it is. Right. Right. There's no question or confusion about who that is. And the voice obviously is also very unique. And I think it's also, it's sad from just a humanity perspective, and that's a person whose life is lost, but also, she defines a lot of, as do people who are, present for the formative years in someone's life, right? You look back and you remember, and you remember music, and of course music is very well tied into our memory centers in our brain, right? But it just brings up all sorts of nostalgia when you hear her music, but then also to just know her as a presence on the planet, and to know this reality, this world with her in it. And for people, obviously this goes for familiar people too, but then to know reality with her not in it, it's sad, right? It's lost.
It is, but isn't it interesting as well at the same time that even though she was so successful, and she had success that a lot of people dream of, and despite that success, she was going through so much. And I feel like I can resonate with that.
Besides what I think most people are aware of, especially earlier in her career, at the hands of her or then husband Ike Turner, I personally was not aware of things after the fact. I didn't follow her career very closely, or her in the media very closely. But so maybe can you speak to that? Do you know of more of what she?
I think for me, sort of what stood out to me so much was that she just had this fame. She was really famous, and even now, there seems to be this. You drive a certain car, you have a certain number of influences, and just people think you've made it and that you just don't have life problems anymore. And she really did. And I think that in so many ways, even in 2023, that happened years ago, but in 2023, it's so relatable that, so many women have all these markers of success, and yet in so many ways,
there's so many other things.
They're struggling, or keeping so many secrets, or there's so much stuff that people don't know. I can't begin to imagine if my life was sashayed out, into the public space.
Paraded out. I know. Absolutely.
Exactly. And
but in a way, it can make the experience of it, and I'm sure it does. It does, actually. The experience. Sorry about that. That was a door slamming. The windows are open.
Got to cut that out. We'll start again.
That scared me. But anyway, so as far as what's that?
We'll start again, Siada. Here we go.
Yes, that's right. But I, in my own life experiences of, keeping up appearances, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Is when things are maybe not so rosy.
Yeah.
It does create even more isolation in the experience, right? You already feel isolated to a degree
Does.
because there's always there's always that internal conversation of the
100%.
immediate is like, I must be the only one who's we're never the only one who's experiencing some sort of theme in our lives,
Yeah.
but then having to create a separation between what's going on personally and what's happening publicly, that only adds to and compounds the isolation that one must feel,
Because
right?
I
And
think,
so,
yeah, I think that a lot of women have that inner voice and it like their gut instinct or like whatever you want to
mhm,
call it, mother nature. Like women know what's going on. Like for the most
yeah,
part, I believe that women know when things are going wrong. They know when things
hmm,
are when they shouldn't be. And so, what is it
yeah,
about us or what is it about our situation or our environments that we feel like, we're made to ignore that intuition,
mm.
as
Do,
as
yeah,
women, as women of color, like
to
sort of
second guess it, right? Especially
100%.
to
Yeah.
second guess it. Yeah. Oh gosh, I definitely. I mean, I have been there again and again, and actually, most recently, at least the one that stands out in my mind
Yeah.
happened not too long ago, like in December.
Okay.
This actually could have turned out into a very very dangerous situation, but it's just it goes to show how one should really never ignore intuition.
Okay. You've got
It's
me at the edge of my seat. I'm like, I need to
I
know
know, and
what
I'm
happened.
kind of doing it on purpose.
All right. So, like, what
but
happened? I need to know.
but
Tell me right now.
yeah,
What?
yeah, no. So it was on my commute. I live in just outside of DC, commute down into DC for work,
Yeah.
um and I metro in. It's just a lot easier. There's a lot of traffic around here, so I
Yeah.
metro in, and I was on my way home at like, I don't know, 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Is that
Something,
dark? Is that dark for you?
it's
Okay.
not even a little bit. I mean, and this was December, so yes, it does start getting dark, like dusky around late in the 4 o'clock hour,
Yeah.
5 o'clock, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But it definitely was not dark yet.
Okay.
But it was, I think, the Thursday right before the Christmas holiday, and
Yeah.
so like not too many people on the subway, um and I happened to be the last stop on the line, and so I was
Why does
and
it sound
people
like a scary movie?
it does,
Like the
right?
middle
We
of
should
the
play like
day.
background music. So no, but this is crazy though, because I mean, I still remember, like, I was watching. That was when the Harry and Meghan documentary came
Oh,
out
yeah.
on Netflix, and they did it
Yeah.
in two parts, and or released it in 2 different weeks or whatever. So I was watching the second week that was released of it, and I had my headphones on, and I'm still pretty. I'm cognizant. Like, I've lived in inner cities for like all throughout undergrad,
Yeah.
in medical school, afterward. I'm aware of how to conduct myself in a city, right?
Yeah.
You are always to be aware of your surroundings and yada yada yada, all that. So I was doing that, but I happened to be watching something on my phone with headphones,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there a man got on the subway somewhere between out after we had left DC and before we got to the last stop. Looked totally reasonable, right? Like, he was dressed in work clothes. He happened to be listening to something in his headphones, and so he was kind of being a little showy and like dancing and that sort of thing, but nothing. Not my spidey senses did not go off.
Okay.
What then
Not yet.
happened was,
Not yet.
right, is that exactly, we as we were getting toward the last stop, like, he sat down, all the time while he was dancing. I never looked at him. I could see him in my peripheral vision, but I just was like, I'm not going to acknowledge this, right? I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, you're doing something. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
poor attention or what, but I see you. I'm not looking up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then he sat down right across from me, like, as almost to say, like, "Do you see me?" And when our eyes met, I felt a sense of dread and
No.
absolute terror in the pit of my stomach that I, to this day, cannot explain. I don't know what it was, because I don't feel that when I lock eyes with most people, right?
Yeah.
But this
Mhm.
person, I did. I felt it, and it was visceral. It was a sense of like doom. That's what it felt like.
Really? What
And
was it about?
so
Was it his
between the
look? Was it his eyes? Was it his
it
presence?
was something. it was the way, the look in his eye. That's the only way I can describe it. The look in the eye was not one of like, you know,
That's freaky.
oh, hi, like our eyes are just meeting. It was like, I have an intention for you. And
Holy
so
moly.
yeah,
I don't know if I can handle the
right.
rest of this in broad daylight.
I mean, it's nothing like obvious. I am whole. I am well. I am not,
Oh, that's right.
um,
It's like six
but
months
yeah,
later.
right. Like, yeah, exactly. Nothing like terrible happened. I promise. I wouldn't be sharing like in with a smile on my face if
Yeah, yeah,
something
100.
did, but it's just, so between the last stop, the second to last stop, and the last stop, he continued to get up and move around, and then I guess he was just frustrated because I wasn't engaging. That's the only way I can explain it. And he gets up and walks towards me, rips my headphones off my head, gets in my face, and is like,
Oh my
"Do you want
god.
to say something to me? I feel like you want to say something to me." And of course, I went into like complete like functional freeze.
Oh my god.
I was able to talk at least, right? But I was just like, oh my God, is this
What on
happening? Like,
earth?
I was more shocked that my feeling was right. I literally in real time was having that, like, oh my God, that was
He
real. What
touched
I felt, it
you.
was
He
real.
literally
Yeah.
touched you.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course I was like, no, I'm not. I'm watching a show on my phone. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It was just so bizarre. So, but he quickly was like apologetic, and so I mean, probably not well in his brain, I'm thinking, right?
Wow.
Like,
I get that's your doctor hat on thinking, okay, maybe this guy's got some
you know,
ailment.
yeah, exactly. Because like, I don't, who does, you don't, nobody, people don't just do that, right? And people who are seemingly like you have somewhat of a, I believe, I don't know, maybe I'm making things up for him, but he looked dressed as though he was coming from some sort of job. So like you can hold a job, you can commute to your job, you can, like, people who you don't do that usually unless there's something going on that, some dysregulation. I don't know, maybe I'm making too much of it, but anyway, so needless to say, I was jarred by the experience. I was jarred. I came home and told my husband. I told my colleague as soon as I got home, because she sometimes metros. I was like, oh my God, watch out, like, just be, I mean, of course it was a reactive,
Yeah.
that could happen any day, but that day I was just like, hey, heads up, I don't know if it's like a full moon, but just be careful on your way home.
That's insane.
I talked to like one of my good friends from childhood. I talked to her about it that day. It's just like, it really threw me for a loop. And there was, for several weeks after that, like, I wouldn't wear my ring. I didn't wear my headphones. I didn't. And then I also got to a point where I was like, screw that. I'm not gonna, like, I'm gonna live how I want to live. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was an experience. It was shitty. It was right, but like, I'm gonna live how I want to live. You're right. I will be careful and vigilant, but I'm not gonna let that, that experience make me a smaller version of myself. So,
I am shook. I'm
but
like,
yeah,
I'm thinking, is this 2023 people shooting their shot, like literally yanking your earphones out of your head?
I
And
don't.
is this just not another symptom of us making excuses for something that's completely unacceptable and
It's just
kind
not
of
acceptable, right? Yeah.
no,
Of course,
seriously.
I do that, especially as a physician, but especially because I'm in the caretaker role. I do give people the benefit of the doubt, and, a lot of lenience for when it's just like, wait a minute, no, you can't come into my space like that. But anyway, this, I'm digressing from the whole point of
No, I
bringing up the
think
story,
this
which
is
is,
the point.
do not do not second guess your intuition. Like,
But I think that's
it will not lead you astray.
yeah, but that's the
It will not.
point, right? As in, don't ignore your intuition and like the fact that you experience this. I feel like there's a real community of people who just make excuses. Like, and I think particularly if you've been marginalized, second guessed, and you just have this whole, okay, well, maybe I'm not taking this maybe like I'm reading too much into this, or maybe,
Mhm.
I should just suck it up and kind of move on. Um, there's a lot of things I feel like that, hold particularly women back. I mean, even myself.
Definitely, because we're entrained to be very agreeable, right? Like, we are
Mm,
conditioned to be
definitely.
as a personality trait, right? To be very
Yeah.
agreeable, and so usually what comes along with that is trying to figure out how to make the least amount of waves, right? And if that means editorializing something in even your narrative, that
At what
makes
cost,
you
right? At what co I'm
at
just
what
thinking,
cost?
like, I mean, the Tina
At
Turner
what
thing got me
cost?
thinking about it, but, like, at what cost?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of, and, like,
So I'm interested with, sorry, go ahead.
no,
You
go
finish your
no.
thought. Finish
I
your
was gonna say
No,
I'm
I
just
was going to say, do
interested
you
at what
know,
co
yeah.
what's that again? I'm just not sure at what cost, that's all. Like, what is it that women
Yeah.
are constantly putting out there? And, like, what cost is it for us, in keeping our silence or maintaining that facade for that matter?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think I've been in relationships myself where, sometimes I feel like you forget your own value in the sense that you
Right.
ignore that gut instinct. And, this is
Mhm.
not like exclusive to like intimate relationships. I mean, it was the case
Yeah.
with Tina Turner. But I
Mhm.
think even like work relationships, friendships, even familial, like family relationships, like,
Mhm. Mhm.
so many times we ignore those those signs really. And I think, like, is it we don't have communication skills? Is it because we come from a collectivist community? Like, I don't know, I
Mhm.
guess this really
It's
gets me
everything.
thinking.
It's
Yeah,
not one
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah.
It is. I mean, I
Mm.
think, like just like we said, having the experience of being female and being growing into from girls into women,
Yeah,
we are conditioned to be more agreeable and to be more like we concede a lot,
100%.
in opinion, in conviction. We tend to take the the you know the lower route, like the we genuflect essentially to sort of make things more comfortable. I think it's to make things more comfortable, maybe make it more comfortable for ourselves or
Yeah.
for others. I don't know, probably both. But then on top of that, having the experience of being let's say like a minority, and I use
Mm.
that in not just to mean like a person of color, a minority in any sense as it relates to the majority in the surroundings in
Yeah.
that circumstance. It will only compound that the drive to minimize and to make oneself smaller
Mm.
in everything, like in opinion and how you conduct yourself, and to not stand out, essentially, right? To not stand out and not be considered a problem or be considered difficult or whatever it is. I think that's the motivation of it, though. I think it's to avoid conflict at its root. It's to avoid conflict. And if it's like perceived conflict or actual conflict, I don't know, that's probably up for debate. But that's the reason, I think, anyway, in my own personal experience of it. Because obviously, I mean, I'm not outside of this.
Yeah.
I've definitely sort of self-censored,
Yeah.
and done the whole like mapping things out in your mind before you
Yeah.
actually say it, and
I think so.
like,
Yeah.
you know
And
it's
yeah.
work.
Yep,
It's work.
definitely. And I think sometimes, like, it's just that, certain, I don't know, wounds, if you want to say. Like, I don't want to
Hmm.
pathologize people either, but like, there's certain
Hmm.
things that just, you may experience as, a protective factor, which is good. I mean, it protects you, and in the moment, it's super helpful. And sometimes we
Hmm.
tend to, start to use that everywhere. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, this is nice. Like, you buy one outfit and then you wear that outfit everywhere you go. You
Right.
find this
Right.
strategy and it works, and, this protected me and it looked after me. So I'm just going to use it all the time. And then
Hmm.
sometimes it actually, contributes to your own downfall. Like, you become like trapped by it,
Yeah.
if anything. And so
Oh,
what was
yeah.
protecting you
Yeah.
initially doesn't really protect you anymore.
Becomes maladaptive.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, it
Right.
sabotages you for the most
Yeah.
part. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's something, I guess, when I was thinking about, you know, um Proud Mary, I wasn't really thinking
Yeah.
about, this. I was thinking, look, she's got amazing songs.
Yeah.
She's a wonderful
Yeah.
person, but I think also she's given us, even as women, just so much to think about in terms of,
Hmm. Hmm.
that no one's immune from, the challenges that she had in her life. And look, she overcame and did
Certainly.
amazing, wonderful stuff. But,
Yeah.
she was also known for what she had to overcome too. And I think there's, a lot of us in her in that sense. So I felt very
Hmm.
nostalgic, I think, about her passing.
Thank goodness that she was as open as she was about it, right?
Yeah,
Because it did help so many women, I'm sure, to
100%.
see somebody in that role having going through the exact same thing that unfortunately women all over the world experience. And
Yeah.
so if she were very guarded and wanting to maintain her image at any cost and
Which
not
a lot
willing
of
to
people
share any
are.
of that.
Which a lot of
Exactly.
people, especially famous
They
people.
do damage control. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness, it's just, and I think that's part of collectively, and I know I'm talking pie in the sky now, but like, if we just collectively could get to a point of being more open about uh, what we're experiencing, like
Yeah.
what the experience of being human is like for you, for me, for somebody on the opposite side of the world, different gender, different identity. I mean, it's if we could just be more open and real and genuine about the experiences that we're having, my gosh, we would real I mean, I know it sounds like so kumbaya, but it's the truth of it. Like, we would realize that we're pretty much living the same experience in different 3D forms, right? But
100%.
anyway, I think we probably should wrap up this episode for where we
Mm.
are, just time wise. But this is really,
Why
really a
don't
good one.
I like it too, and I think just for us in CID in terms of editing, we'll just
Hmm.
wrap it up without saying we're going to wrap it up. Let's just wrap it up.
Yeah.
Maybe do you want to just
Okay.
say something, and then we'll be like, oh, and that's like,
Okay.
I don't know, really like, and Tina Turner's given us something to think about,
Yeah.
food for thought, and then we
Yeah.
can just end it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're out of time for this episode, folks, but thank you so much for joining us as always. So, um, we, of course, we brought up Tina Turner in this episode, and we just wish her family and everybody who really looked up to her and idolized her and at all the comfort and ease in her passing. And she's really given us a lot to reflect on and think about as we carry her torch forward and continue this thing called life. So thank you again, and we'll see you on the next episode.